There are 8 bottles of human albumin in my basement refrigerator. It's another name for human protein. It sounds creepy, but it saved our daughter's life. Our 21-year-old daughter, Olivia, was a student in the business school at the University of Washington. A strong and independent young woman, she'd played cricket with street children in Mumbai while studying abroad, taught English in China, and completed a triathlon. Then last year, everything collapsed when she became gravely ill. We became her whole world, embracing her needs and sharing her grief and awareness of it. Her illness and all its ramifications became the story of our lives. There were so many hard parts that I found myself at times longing to pay attention to something else. But that's just asking to be someone else. Olivia got this crazy disease of her kidneys that caused them to spill or lose all her body's proteins. No one really knows what caused it. We spent the better part of a year trying to keep her alive because you absolutely cannot live without protein. We tried all sorts of drugs in an effort to stop the attack on her kidneys. When all the traditional medicines failed us, we tried chemotherapy, the only data for that treatment coming from places like China and Argentina. It was a nightmare trying to sort it all out. She endured 50 days in the hospital. At one point, she became nearly comatose, having developed blood clots in her brain. The profound protein losses caused massive edema with 60 extra pounds of bloating and the stretch marks to prove it. We came close to losing her, but she rallied. She lived. Hospital beds should be king-size, by the way. Still, this is not simply a story about the body's chemistry gone amok. Amidst the tragedy, tears, frustrations, and waiting, there were moments that rise up and shine, reflecting the goodness of life within a crisis. My sister-in-law, Maria, spent every other night at the hospital despite having her own family to care for. Her sturdy competence and quietly loving presence was a comfort. We depended on it. When an artist friend arrived from Eugene, Oregon, she encouraged meditation. Stillness made me want to run from the hospital and from everything unknown and frightening. But I didn't. Instead, we'd gather around Olivia deep in sleep, her body intensely trying to repair itself, and quietly oppose thumb to finger. We listened to the soft rhythmic rise and fall of her breathing. It slid aside our prayer and emptiness and became our mantra. Time hung suspended and holy for a short while. After 1 month at the University Hospital in Seattle, Olivia came home to Spokane only to be readmitted to Sacred Heart 6 days later in yet another rapid decline. Her spirits crumbled, and we prayed for a way through the unknown. An 18th side effect-riddled drug was added, and a week later we went home worn witless. We made attempts at cooking lessons at the house, but on our first red sauce she developed a sudden severe headache, and back we went for an emergency brain scan to see if she had worsening blood clots, and once again we reached into the darkness. I have always hated roller coasters. Despite the myriad of drugs, her body still could not hang on to protein. Olivia's survival continued to depend on bottles and bottles of intravenous human albumin. The disease seemed intent on consuming her, and weakness and fatigue became constant companions. Walking 20 yards became almost impossible. And believing in recovery, well, that became as wobbly and unstable as the IV pole that decorated her bedside. Her clever doctors chose to take a last stand and treat her with chemotherapy. For several weeks, she endured the assault with stubborn resolve. Within 24 hours of completing her last infusion of chemo, I found her in her room gathering up her school books. She looked at me wearily and asked, "Mom, will you drive me to Seattle tomorrow? I want to take my exams and finish winter quarter." "Okay," I said, unable to hide my uncertainty. We traveled the following day with a car full of unspoken anxiety. I think I can safely say that we were the only people in that hotel with a suitcase full of bottles of albumin and IV tubing. We didn't use it, but I wasn't taking any chances. We longed for remission, and by fall, Olivia returned to school looking like any other college student, sporting yoga pants and a backpack. We don't know what the future holds, but who does really? I just know our daughter is brave and strong. She was grace under fire and filled us with endless admiration. I consent now to the necessary transformations. I avert my eyes from my own losses and fears. Instead, I'll absorb them with hope. Maybe even open that refrigerator door and reconcile my anxiety about those silly bottles. Sometimes I think as mothers, we believe everything needs our strength and doing. And sometimes it absolutely does. Being a mother is not for cowards. Still, we are not the last word on our lives. Living in the shelter of community, our destinies are entwined. So in this dizzy strife of things, we continue to lean into the light and into one another.